Latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to Off the Floor. That's our Discord server. Go right to the description, click on the link, click all the way through. You bypass the $1 Apple upcharge, pay $2.99 a month. You get access to 10 different channels and to our stage shows. Trust me, in January, you're going to want to be on there. So check it out, Off the Floor. That's our Discord server. Also, check out the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Includes Underdog Fantasy. Use the code 5. You get up to $1,000 in bonus play right away. Underdog has more than 5 million happy players. You can play across the sports spectrum, play up, down on all the players, and there's lots more that you can do on the app. So check it out. It's Underdog Fantasy. Again, use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Get up to $1,000 in bonus play. Here's the thing. You must be at least 18, 19 in Alabama or Nebraska, 19 in Colorado for some games, 21 in Massachusetts. Present state where fantasy operates. Terms apply. If you're concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. And now, today's episode.
Down the Biscayne. Yikes. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat, we trust.
You sound scared.
It's about have the guts, we're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at 5 Reasons Sports. I got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. I got Brady Hawk. You can follow him at Brady Hawk 305. We're actually doing this episode after the Miami Heat beat the Brooklyn Nets to go to one game over 500. A couple days off prior to going up to Orlando, the scene of the crime. They get to go right back up there, try to avenge what was the most embarrassing loss of the season. Things looked a little bit up in this game against the Nets, and so we're going to talk about one of the things that I think made people feel better, which was that the young players played, and specifically Kel'el Ware got extended minutes. It's the second game that he did get more minutes than he was getting earlier in the season, although people wanted him to play more against Orlando, especially because I think he was a plus 24 in that game. Of course, he was not on the court in the fourth quarter when everything fell apart. But the Heat are trying to work in some of their young players, especially without Terry Rozier, without Jimmy Butler in this last game. We don't know when Jimmy's going to be back from this stomach ailment, which has caused him to miss 2 games and most of a third, the game that he went out of. And, of course, the sad news in this game, and by the time you hear this podcast, we may have more clarity on it, or you may have more clarity on it from us and from the Heat. But Drew Smith had a lower leg injury. Did not look great. We don't want to speculate too much, but it did look like the kind of thing that could keep him out for a while, if not the entire season. So the Heat, again, is cycling through some young players. In this game, we saw Pelle Larsson. We saw Jaime Jaquez starting. We saw Nikola Jovic. We're going to talk more about him in this episode. And we saw Kel'el Ware. And let's start here because I want to get into the combinations we saw Ware with. And I know, Brady, that's something we were talking about during the game. And I got a chance to talk to Nikola Jovic after the game about this specifically. So to you, there's been so much conversation about playing him with Bam. It's clear at this point that Spoelstra is not ready to do that, not consistently. And even Bam, when he was asked after the game about when watching Ware on the bench, and he basically said, he indicated he'd like to see more of it, okay, that there's an energy shift, that he's glad he's getting the opportunity. When we talked to Ware after the game, he was asked about, I asked him about what he's tried to improve on the most this year to get on the court, and he said strength. I said upper body, lower body. He says everything. But even if he improves his strength, I don't think we're going to see him with Bam a whole lot. Who are we going to see him with? And do you think what we saw in this game with him being out there with Jovic is something we're going to see more of?
Yeah, so I didn't think a game against Brooklyn with Hemi would matter to this extent, but I do think there are a few trends that will carry over, and it all surrounds Kel'el Ware. As you know, I've been kind of talking about over and over after these games, play Kel'el Ware, play the kids, and that's what he pretty much did in that lineup. It was just playing the young guys together, and you could see for the first time all season that second unit had an identity. I don't remember the last time this season that unit had a specific identity, and they had one. They were youthful, they were energizing, they were going to run, they were going to play fast. And when you asked about kind of specific combinations, and you're right, the Bam thing is kind of that's down the line. There's always baby steps here. It was always playing him first for extended minutes by himself, and then the Bam things later. We're still trying to cross the bridge for step one here. But it seems like Nikola Jovic and him really have something to be utilized. I mean, it's the youthful thing. It's the fact that their games bounce off each other. Like every time Kel'el would kind of get a block or a rebound, he'd immediately look over and he'd swing it out to Jovic, and Jovic is darting down the floor. And then he could play make from there. I think the difference between Jovic playing with Ware and Bam is that Jovic kind of has a defined role, whereas in the starting lineup, it's like, okay, Jovic does things that Bam does. So it's like, okay, do I give the ball to Bam and then I go to the corner? It's like when Ware's I know my role. I can go and I can do certain things. So Jovic-Ware thing I think is to be very interesting. I really do think they have to lean into it. The other guy is Tyler Hero. I mentioned it like the first time Ware got run. I thought Tyler played well with him. Tyler played well backup over the years, and they haven't been great backup bigs. Like they've been unathletic bigs, and this is the first time when I asked Tyler after the game about kind of his thoughts about playing with Kel'el. He's like, I love playing with Kel'el. Like it gives them a different element. It's pretty clear the amount of lobs he's able to hit him up on. Kel'el talked about after the game, that two-man game. It's like you're either going to worry about Tyler's shooting or you're going to worry about me as a lob threat. Like you have to literally pick your poison. And when you have a guy off the bench that's kind of stashed and not playing, and you have the ability to put somebody in that defenses are going to pick their poison against, you play that guy. And that's the point they're at with Kel'el Ware. And I'll say as well, he played well defensively tonight. And I know it's Brooklyn. I know it's not the greatest test in the world, but he needs these reps to be able to defend and drop, get blocks, get deflections, good timing, good energy. If that carries over, and even if it doesn't carry over, to be honest, I want that guy to play.
Well, they haven't had vertical spacing in a while. And for people who don't sort of understand what that is, this was a big topic during the Big Three Heat years, that they didn't have that player kind of, again, create that vertical spacing to sort of open up the floor where you could throw a lob to him. You mentioned Tyler. We saw over the years, like Tyler kind of getting stopped in the lane and then throwing that. It was either the floater or now he can throw the lob. And he is a good lob thrower in those situations. But this was such a big deal during the Big Three Heat years because they finally got it with Chris Anderson, and it changed everything. It changed everything for what they did, and that's why they went 37-2 after they got Chris Anderson that year. It was not just coincidental that the 27-game winning streak started after they brought him in, because LeBron was asking for a player like that. Now, Alex, you mentioned they kind of had it. You both sort of talked about this. They both kind of had it early on with Whiteside before he started doing too much, and they started to focus on him, and he wanted the ball down in the post and all of that, and there were the complaints. But at the very beginning, he was a rim runner. He would play above the rim. They didn't throw him the best lobs at the time. There was always this issue about what kind of lobs Dragic would throw him and all the rest of it. But they haven't had that kind of guy. That's not really the way that Bam plays. We talked about sometimes he doesn't roll that hard in those situations. But before I go to Alex on this, Brady, you mentioned something that I think is important, because I talked to Jovic about this specifically, and I asked him about playing with Ware. And he said it's easier than playing with Bam. And he doesn't mean that as disrespectful to Bam. It's actually the opposite. He's like, Bam does so many things. We put him in so many places offensively. And we're going to end up putting this video this on the YouTube channel as well, so you can hear it directly. But he said he does so many things offensively. With Ware right now, he's like, again, he's going to roll to the rim. I know where he's going to be. And Ware talked about Jovic being dynamic offensively. And so they are a more natural fit than playing Ware and Bam together. And I think we've been looking for a place to play Jovic. And when they played him in the starting lineup next to Bam, it was clunky because Jovic sort of needed to just be a spot-up shooter in that group. If they're going to put him on the second unit with Ware, they're coming in together, I think they can build that kind of chemistry. And so I saw it on Twitter tonight. Well, why aren't they playing with Bam? And it's like we said, baby steps. And the other thing, Alex, I want to get to on this is we and Brady and I did this pod on Ware early on, okay? The fans a lot of times make this about, well, they need this guy to play right now because they need this skill set. And I agree. At this point, they could use the skill set that he can provide, even if he makes mistakes. But a lot of times they hold the player out so that he's ready, okay, and he can absorb more things when he actually plays. I think that it's clear that Ware has picked, just as Jovic did last year, that Ware has picked up on certain things that have been beneficial to him when he's playing. He might not be playing at this level if they had shoved him in early in the season. Where are you at with what you saw tonight?
I mean, I'm pretty much with you guys. Like, I've been impressed with the way that he's able to be productive in short stints, despite, like whatever flaws that have been poked at him, including by me, right? I'm not trying to separate myself from that as far as like, maybe improvements he can make on pick and roll defense and improving the decision making there. Of course, physical, right? That was the first thing he spoke about tonight in the press room, is that there's still the focus is to, put strength on his body and all over, right? Not necessarily just lower body, not necessarily just upper body. That's the focus right now. So those are things that he can improve on, time. In the meantime, he's got to get reps. And, we said it on our quick takes. I think this is a great stretch for him to play. The Magic game turned out how it did, but against a team like that at the time, right, missing all those guys and a team that plays with that much size, I thought playing him in that Magic game was a smart decision. And playing him again tonight, like he's been productive, man. I think you mentioned the Hassan comp, and it's not always a bad thing. Like I know the Hassan thing ended weird, but he was a very productive big man who could block shots, who could be athletic. I think obviously Kel'el is taller and more athletic and younger, right? So it's like you get some of the stuff that you like that was so tantalizing and effective about Hassan, and hopefully you can iron out some of the other stuff, right? Since you're getting him so early and he's this talented, pretty much lottery pick. So I'm glad that they're playing him. Impressed with what he's given him. I think that the stuff that you want to iron out from his game is stuff that can only be ironed out if you're giving him the appropriate reps. And I think with Caleb kind of there being a slight decline in effectiveness and just not always wanting to play him every single night in the regular season. Now that Thomas Bryant is not on the team anymore, like the spot is his to lose. And I'm not saying Love will never play again in the regular season if Ware is active. But I think now is kind of the start of him having to prove himself and not just earn the spot, but hold the spot. Because I think he's obviously a very different player than Love and gives him a different dynamic, gives guys an easy release valve as a roller, a lob threat. And I already mentioned the rim protecting stuff before. You could just start off with there. He had the three tonight. I don't remember if he hit a second one. But yeah, like the shot is another thing. You can keep working on that as well. So, yeah, seeing him out there, playing well while also seeing him with Larson, right? You got, unfortunately, before the Drew thing happened, you did get to see him with Drew, and you saw sort of a shift there. So that was very interesting to me. And, yeah, I'm just going to be very interested to see where it goes from here with Kel'el.
Well, after the break, what I want to get into is the Jimmy factor on this, because you mentioned a guy that Jimmy likes to play with, which is Kevin Love. And I just want to start here with it. Kevin was in good spirits after the game today in the locker room, joking around with all these young guys. He knows the deal. He knew when he re-signed here that they have a group of young players, particularly in the front court, that have to be developed. And I don't think this is the same thing as when Kevin was in Cleveland and he was frustrated by the lack of playing time. He was a couple years young.
To play the game against Brooklyn.
No,
on a Monday night in December. So.
I think so too. But I do want to get into the idea of Jimmy coming back, because I do think that changes that dynamic a little bit again, whenever that is. Before we do want to mention a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, our friends over at UBreak. That's with a U at the start. UBreakWheelFix.com or UBreakWheelFix on Instagram. You can check out everything that they do. Of course, if you got any kind of problems with your wheels, we know the streets of South Florida can be unforgiving. You can go there to get them fixed, but also they can make them look nice. They can do the refinishing, the powder polishing, the powder coating, all that stuff. They are based in North Miami. They've actually moved to a bigger shop to accommodate all the people that we send them. Of course, UBreak Wheel Fix, you can get 5.5%. That's 5.5% off your next order if you mention us. You can mention 5 on the Floor, 5 Reasons. They'll take it. Mark and his team will take very good care of you, and they're big Miami Heat fans. They've come to our events as well. So check them out. UBreak Wheel Fix. Again, that's UBreak Wheel Fix on Instagram or UBreakWheelFix.com. All right, the elephant in the room here is that this is a team, and we talked about, that's on 2 timelines to a certain degree. I talked to Jovic about this tonight, and again, we'll play more of this in the interview. It's going to be on YouTube, but there's an understanding. He was telling me that he spoke to Jaquez, who did start tonight, last night. He talked to him last night about this idea that all these young guys have this good rapport, and they're kind of coming up together, and so they're leaning on each other as all of them are dealing with kind of ups and downs and inconsistent playing time in some cases. But that he also knows that they're never going to go totally young, that this is not an organization that tanks. It's not an organization that even rebuilds, that they know that it's, even though, again, they've got a good group of young players, that they're never going to pivot that direction. And kind of what Nico was telling me was, we'll never be that bad because the way we always start with defense here. And so Spo's defense is going to keep us in the game. Even if we wanted to go that direction, we couldn't. But I asked this because the Jimmy thing is the overhang on this season. And the question is, again, are you trying to maximize what you have while Jimmy is still playing at a certain level and while he, frankly, is under contract and on the roster, right? How does that play into the decision with playing guys like Ware? How does he complement Jimmy in any way? Because again, the player he seems to be most comfortable on the floor with is the one who's likely going to get squeezed out of this situation, and Kevin Love.
So you talked about from a winning perspective and about going the whole decision behind Ware is for the future and going young. But I don't know if that's totally the case because I think Ware is better right now as a backup big than Kevin Love is. Like, I don't think this is a future decision. I think this is a current decision. I think this is a situation where he just fits pieces better together. And that kind of gets back to your point about Jimmy. I think they always made this rotation substitution pattern around the fact that Kevin Love was playing, that if Kel'el Ware is kind of the stoned in backup big moving forward, I think you're going to see Tyler kind of centering that second unit, whereas Jimmy, and I know everybody says Jimmy and Bam all of a sudden don't play well together over the years. That's kind of the unit I think he sticks with a little bit more, and then Tyler could play with Pella, Jovic, and Ware, because I think Tyler just plays that quick, fast pace as those three guys do, and Jimmy can kind of play slowed down with guys like Haywood or Bam or et cetera, or Duncan specifically. So I think you're just going to see, I think, a combination difference here. And I just think, look, I've been saying it, for so long that they just need a change. They need something that's going to be different. And if it's putting Ware in and changing up patterns and lineups and making Tyler the guy that stays with the second unit, if that's the one difference you can make, I think you make that difference because I think it's better for the team overall. And they just need something new. Like, just listen to the way the players talked after the game about Ware. It's a credit to Ware because he's talented, but it's really because it's the first time they've had something new since Terry, and we could count on our hands just the amount of things they've had that's new. And it feels like they just get so excited when there is something new and difference on the floor. And it was pretty clear tonight as we kind of projected, long that was different. Them said that the vertical ability, the shot blocking, just like the way they looked, like the way Tyler looked when Ware would roll the basket, like almost surprised of how large he was, that he could just kind of like, oh yeah, I can just hit him early over the top and he'll just go up. Like, I think they're gonna just start figuring this out little by little, and I think he needs continue to play. Like, he needs extended minutes here. This shouldn't be an in and out thing. But the overall point is, I think Jimmy could play with Ware too. Like, I still think, Jimmy's not gonna be throwing him lobs. Let's make it clear, but I do think there still is an ability defensively specifically that could be interesting, because I think that would kind of be the fun part where Jimmy's known as such a good weak side defender. And I think that's kind of been one of the bright spots of Ware defensively in his short stints of this season, is that he's watching the plays develop, and he rotates over and he gets weak side blocks. We've seen it multiple times this year. So they can lean into it, but I really do believe the Tyler thing is real with Ware. I think they're going to lean into that with him in the second year.
Well, I think the thing with Jimmy too is I think the key for Ware to play with him is he's got to be in the right place. I can see a frustration level if he's not. When Jimmy's out there, things need to.
He yells at Kevin.
Well, he yells at Kevin. He's going to yell at Ware, but Kevin can take it, I think, a little bit. Kevin got yelled at by LeBron for 4 years and was able to handle it. I think that's something that Ware is going to need to adjust to. And again, I come to this, that is, the Heat tend to, and I know that people have frustrations with some of what Spoelstra does, holding players back, so to speak, but they tend to insert the guy at the right time. Like that, again, whatever issues you have with certain things that the Heat do, one of the things I don't have an issue with typically is the way that they develop players. And I say that even as we've talked about the fact that this is one of the few years I can remember where it doesn't seem like a whole lot of guys improved internally. The internal improvement didn't really happen this time, but it does seem like with certain things, it's happened with Ware. Before we close here, Alex, what does Ware have to provide beyond the obvious? Which is, the obvious is shot blocking, erasing mistakes, those kind of things. I don't think he's an elite screen setter at this point. That's obviously something we've talked about that he needs to work on. I don't want to see him stretching the floor a whole lot. I know he made a 3 tonight. When he misses, he tends to miss. I kind of feel like that as we go with him. It's nice to know he can go to it. I don't want him shooting 3 or 4 threes a game. What would be a reasonable expectation for him in these minutes? That, again, not just as a developmental project, but that it actually helps the team.
So, like you already mentioned, right, we see the baseline stuff with what he can do as a rim protector, what he can do as a lob threat. I think from here, given this role, right, kind of sticking to that, not going outside of it, like you mentioned, with too many jumpers or too many of the stuff that we would see early on in his summer league stint, where he was doing mid-post work. Obviously, we haven't seen any of it in the regular season, so I'm not saying that that's an issue, but like I think it's about polishing up what he can do in that role to become sort of a star in that role, right? Like continue not only being productive in the short stints, but also I think being a little bit more disciplined with the pick and roll defense. Not that it was, really bad tonight or anything, but I think if he continues down this path and is not making mistakes, is not being too jumpy on certain things, and because that was kind of the issue with Whiteside, is like he realized how good of a rim protector he was and got a little bit thirsty for it, right? Again, not to shade him for that. He was awesome at what he did. Again, being able to get to like 10 blocks, right? Nobody was doing that. Nobody was getting a triple-double with blocks. Nobody was doing it. And now like only Victor can do that, right? So I'm not trying to shade Ware. I'm not trying to shade Whiteside in any way when I make those comparisons. I think it's a good thing that he's able to do those things right away, despite the body stuff. And since the body stuff is not going to get resolved like right away, I think the best he can do is polish up the pick and roll defense, not get too jumpy, just use his length. And on the offensive end, you mentioned it, he needs to, make contact with the screens. Obviously, sometimes he's going to want to slip it, so that's less important there. But make more contact with the screens, and then really the other thing that I think is a big thing for him is the rebounding. And I think he feels to me like one of those guys who's been really tall his whole life and hasn't always had to work for the rebounds because he's been so much like a grown man, even with the skinny frame. He's been a grown man compared to some of the other people out there in the lower levels. I feel like now at the NBA, you can't get away with it as much. Like you have to box out as much as possible. And yeah, he's still going to be able to grab rebounds with his frame and length. But I think he can really hit his ceiling in this role and become a star in this role if he fixes up and just kind of polishes up those three things.
Well, you talk about getting thirsty here. Heat fans started to get thirsty tonight when they were saying, why not play Bam and Bitch together? I can just tell you that's not going to happen right away. Okay, it may not happen at all, ever. It's not going to happen right away. This is like people wanted to see Whiteside with Bam, and Spoelstra tried that in short spurts and then got totally away from it. Just be thankful for this, okay? If you play there, you're going to have a skilled big on the floor at all times. That's it. Like, and this is kind of what we were talking about with Bam watching Ware. For those who were concerned, and not that Kevin Love is not a skilled big. Obviously he is, but he's the downside of his career. He's not a physical force like he was earlier. People forget what kind of rebounder Kevin was early in his career. But again, Kevin understood the deal when he came here, and I transitioned more into that. I do think there will be games where he'll be effective. You put him out there with Jimmy for short spurts. But look, I've come around on this. Maybe it's the frustration of watching a team that seems stale to me, but I think Kel'el is ready to at least get these minutes in games, and then maybe his role expands as we go forward. But again, fans who think he's going to throw him out there with Bam at the end of the game to protect the rim, that's not – I don't think that's where this is going. I think the biggest beneficiary of this could end up being Niko Jovic, because I think if you see the two of them playing well together, Spo might keep them together, and there seems to be at least a natural chemistry or fit in terms of their skill sets where there's not duplication. Whereas with Bam and Niko, there is a little bit of duplication.
Also, Niko and Love.
And Niko and Love could, right.
To a certain extent.
To a certain extent. But I think the Ware thing, honestly, I think it takes a burden off Jovic that you have a shot blocker back there.
And a roll guy.
And
a Love's dumping it down to roll bigs.
Right. I mean, we forget, like he is a skilled passer in those kind of situations. So we'll see what happens with it, but something at least to get a little bit excited about heading into the Christmas break. We hope that everybody has a great holiday, whatever it is that you celebrate. Thanks for following us on 5 on the Floor. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Sign up for Off the Floor. It's a great Christmas gift, right? And it's less than $36 for the entire year if you bypass the Apple upcharge. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.